Doesn't have to be specific to your panel, but if the question you can answer, because this is the expert time now. And whatever I can answer, if I don't see any of y'all answering, then I'll take up the answer to it also. So it's just more in general. And we'll be trying to summarize all the sessions that just got done. And there's some questions focused on certain, like Skydio type of questions. And then there's some questions focused on, let me see, it was for micro drones. So if you have the answer for it, great. If not, we'll just move to the next question. Hope you all were enjoying the session. If you were able to attend some of the panels and everything, this is the first time we are putting together virtual sessions. So a lot of, we want to take some lessons learned and everything to improve in the future.
Quick question, Chris. How's my focus now?
Hold on, give me 1 second. So I was dealing with something with you. Let me see. Yeah, it's much better.
Okay, good.
Yep, much better.
Yeah, for whatever reason, that the darn webcam was stuck. I had to unplug it, replug it in, and then re-log in again. I've never seen that happen before.
That's weird. Let me see.
Hey, Jeremy. You're on mute. Still on mute, okay.
Are we live on YouTube right now?
Yes.
We're supposed to be, but I don't see it.
It says live. So right now, like what we're doing right now, it's like live.
Well, no, so I have a black screen. I muted you guys, but for some reason I don't see it on YouTube yet.
I'm unmuted, Dash. I got it fixed.
Good day, Ryan. We see you.
Hey, Ryan, you got a drone in your head.
I sure do.
No, that's his party hat.
Hey, Jeremy. Nice to make your virtual acquaintance. We've talked.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you?
Good, good.
Hey, Jeremy, it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, those blocks you have in the back, it's your sound dampeners?
Correct. Yeah, actually, I'm in my movie theater room, so that's where I've got this down here for sound dampening.
Chris, I think maybe 1 or 2 people might join us a little late. They message, so they may just directly come in.
So yes, sorry, you guys are live, and I can't mute it. So
Gotta roll with it.
yep. I'm sorry, Darshan, what were you saying?
Said some people may join in the middle of the session from the speakers. So
Okay.
I don't know if you have a waiting room or something.
No, I think we're good. Darshan, you ready?
Yes,
I'll
sir.
just open Webinar Ninja, give it a couple seconds, and then you can go.
I'm going to give everyone a good 2 to 3 minutes to introduce. Chris, when you give me a cue when I can start.
You're on the air, so people are on Webinar Ninja and they can see you guys.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Drone Talks. This is the last session for the day, part of Arizona Drone Fest and Education Expo. Many of you all who have registered for the event will be watching us on the Webinar Ninja platform, and the rest will be watching us either on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So first of all, it's Friday, the last session for the day, but we're trying to make it exciting. And I know that with the panel that I have, it's going to be fun. So welcome to Drone Talks. I'm your moderator for the session, Darshan Devakaran. I'm the president of Airavat Solutions, and Airavat Solutions and AZDroneFest I've come together to organize this event, educational and outreach event. Tomorrow we have the training session. So do visit the website, that is www.AZDroneFest.com, and watch for all the updates and the agenda and everything. And we hope to see many of you all back again in tomorrow's session. So with that, let me kick off this exciting session, Drone Talks, because we are in this pandemic and we don't get to meet each other face to face as much as we should. But social media has brought us closer, and we have a lot of these events and sessions taking place. But the main focus there is how do we all come together, talk about what we love, that is drones, and how this future is going to help everyone. Again, we are happy that you all are joining us on this live session. As I ask questions, I will be looking more towards the left side screen because that's where my questions are coming live. Remember, you can post your questions live. I'll be seeing those questions. And if you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, please post your questions and we'll try our best to answer. So without wasting any more time, I would like to introduce our panel, and I will give each of them 2 to 3 minutes to talk about what they're doing and what organization they're part of. So first of all, the panel for today is Dawn, Kristen, David, Jeremy Stafford, Ryan, and Ron. And we may have a few more people joining us shortly. So let me first kick it off with Dawn. Dawn, tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Oh, thank you very much. Hello, everybody out there. Dawn Zoldai here. I'm a 25-year United States Air Force veteran. I was a member of the United States Air Force JAG Corps. So I'm a licensed attorney, and that's what JAGs do. We're attorneys for the military. After retiring from there, I spent 2 years in the General Counsel's office for the Air Force, doing business matters for the United States Air Force Academy. And I'm currently actually the Deputy Director at the Air Force Academy Center for Character and Leadership Development in my federal capacity. So I'm going to give a disclaimer here in a minute. I'm here in my private capacity as the CEO and founder of P3 Tech Consulting. So I started my company about a year ago, and it's to connect people with a passion for advanced technology platforms with the policies and programs they need to succeed. So that's my intro, but I'll give you a quick disclaimer because I am a federal employee, that I'm here in my private capacity, and nothing I say is representing anything on behalf of the DoD, the Air Force, or the Air Force Academy. Not trying to influence the actions of any federal agencies or their employees. And if I happen to mention a company or an agency, I'm not intending to actually endorse them. So that's all I got. Nice to meet you.
So I think it's great to start with a disclaimer always. But yeah, Kristen, let us tell us a little about you and what you're doing currently.
Yeah, thank you, Darshan. So my name is Christian Stallings. I am the co-founder and CEO of Bird One. We develop drone software that connects your GIS to your drone using augmented reality. Prior to that, I've been working in remote sensing for about 15 years. I'm a certified photogrammetrist by training. I've been working with unmanned systems for over a decade now, primarily on the service side. And now we, making software and solutions that we saw a need for in the market based on my experience providing some of these services.
Thank you, Kristen. And me coming from a GIS background myself, I know how drones and GIS play an integral role in so many use cases, and we'll be talking more about that late in the session. David, a little about you, and we can see the FAA logo, so let us know more about you.
Good day, everyone, and good evening for most of you here in the U.S. David Ibarra. Currently, I am the AFS 300 UAS Division Representative. Main focus is urban air mobility and advanced air mobility. I'm also the subject matter expert for UAS towered operations. My background is I'm a retired Air Force. Go Air Force. Also, I got almost 30 years with the FAA as well, working my way up from aircraft manufacturing as well. So I have a manufacturing background and been doing this for some time now. And I'm also a UAS pilot. I got almost 200 hours flight times on various different platforms, both fixed wing and rotorcraft. So glad to be here.
Glad to have you here, David. Jeremy.
Hey everybody, Jeremy Stafford. Company I'm with is Ideal Blasting, a little different. You guys are probably wondering what that has to do with drones. But we do a lot in different aspects, from mining, construction, and then we get into public safety, law enforcement, bomb squads as well. A little bit about me, my background. I've been flying UAVs and building these things for quite a long time. I think my first video I posted on YouTube was like 2007, 2008. So been doing it for a little bit. And having that said, just kind of brought it over into our company and just kind of going from there. We're a micro drones dealer. We're doing a lot with those lately on the kind of the surveying, the GIS side, as you guys were talking about, hitting on that a little bit. But that's a little bit about me, and I'll turn it over to you guys, let you keep going.
Thank you, Jeremy. Ryan. I think, Ryan, you're on mute. Yeah, perfect now.
Yep, Ryan Alfonso. If you haven't seen Regulations Part 1 2 days ago and Regulations Part 2 today, I work for the FAA. I'm the liaison and coordinator for practically all the SMEs, like David down below me. I'm 8 years Army. I'm sorry for the Air Force folks. And mechanic, parachute rigger. I've been in aviation for 20 years doing all sorts of stuff. And yes, I do have a bunch of drones, and I love flying them recreationally, of course.
Thank you, Ryan. So we have Air Force, Army, blasting. Okay, I don't know what type of a session are we on, but I hope you're on the right paddle. Ron, a little about you.
Hey, thank you. And keeping with the Halloween theme, I have it nice and dark in the background here, right? So I'm Ron Leach. I am former Navy, so we got to represent our flag as well, right? So I'm the principal of Leach Strategic Partners. What Leach Strategic Partners does is provide policy guidance. We help public safety agencies stand up constitutionally sound, safe within the National Aerospace System programs, and we bring to the table some knowledge that maybe someone who wants to get into the field of UAS. We try to bring to them the real questions that they need to ask themselves, whether it's policies, procedures, aircraft, counter UAS. We've touched on a little bit of each space. I'm a retired New Jersey State Police trooper. I spent 23 years with the State Police, 15 of which were with the Aviation Bureau. I have about 30 years of aviation experience between fixed wing and helicopter. And what I found is lacking is having the aviation expertise with understanding what law enforcement the concerns or the needs are to address, again, the privacy and the constitutional issues. So that's what we bring to the table. We get waivers for our clients. We write the SOPs and policies and procedures again. So thanks.
Thank you, Ron. And we have Scott, who just joined us. Scott, you want to give a quick introduction about what you do? And you're on mute, Scott.
There we go. You might be able to hear me if I unmute myself, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
My name is Scott Kern. I am the owner of AirVision, and I am a UAS service provider. I do sell many different platforms. We do training, support, and education, more focused on the training and education than sales, because I feel like training and education is the missing puzzle to the big piece. You know, you get together this 5,000 piece puzzle and you get down to the last piece and you're missing that piece. Well, education and training is that missing piece for this technology. I wholeheartedly believe that. So I love the expo. I love the education. It just, the more education we get, the better off we are for everybody in the UAS technology, because not only if something happens, we affect everybody on the call, but you affect your life, you affect my life, you make my job a lot harder to do than following the rules and regulations and working together with different departments. Reach out to your department, see what they do. Maybe their way might not work for you, but you compare those ways and come on a same page where everybody's on the same page for everything. That's basically what I do. I appreciate everybody behind the scenes putting together the expo and everything else. So I really do appreciate everybody, even the attendees, everybody on the call. Something I take a lot of pride in is education and training. And I love what I do. I'm very passionate about the technology because I know the benefit of these units. I know about the data set. I'm a data geek. I love the data set. I love a 20-minute flight. And to capture those pictures and to get all that data set out of those pictures is phenomenal to me. So that's a short introduction to myself. It might have been a little longer than most, but I do apologize.
No, this really says that. So this is it's around 7:10 p.m. in North Carolina, and Scott is in North Carolina, and the energy in North Carolina is so high. So this says how much we love what we do, and the main thing here is we are in this session to have an informal discussion. What you all see is happening in the industry. What you all want to inform people, all those things we're going to be discussing. So it's an informal, fun discussion. If you have jokes to crack, we love that. That will make it really good. If you have something sad to say, let's avoid it on a Friday. So let's start this off with a question really on drone programs. So part of our event, our first session for the day was drone programs. And those who attended the session may have taken a lot of information, and those who missed it, what we're trying to focus here on this next question, which I'm going to be asking is, what are the top 3 reasons why a drone program can fail? We know we have heard so much about how to build a drone program and stuff. I would like to get 3 specific reasons why a drone program can fail, and who would want to kick that off? Okay, Scott.
I go back to education and training, not being properly educated or trained. I feel like every pilot does not need to be flown or learn to fly in GPS. I wholeheartedly believe we should train these guys to fly in ADI mode, because when you're running an automated mission and GPS locks and your unit goes back into ADI mode, I feel like these pilots need to fly in ADI mode. So I believe education and training is a big reason why most of these programs fail.
And I totally agree. You gave a good example of pilots in a drone program that are too comfortable flying in GPS mode, and they think that with that sort of that is enough as a training element. But when they go for certain other applications and certain operations, you need a little bit more a different approach to the flights. And yes, an ADI mode gives you a good level of training. Anything else anyone has to add on the why a drone program can fail? Because we are really 5 years, 6 years into this industry, and it's still fresh. We're seeing fresh programs, but then there are programs that have been there for some time. We want to give them this message so that they can prepare better. So, Jeremy, you want to? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So one thing that I've seen, it's something that we kind of talked about. We've hit on when we do events and training events, like what Scott was saying. The education is important. And one of the things that kind of ties in with that is educating the public. So if you are starting up a program, is making sure that you get that community buy-in, that you have everybody on board and realize that you are doing this and why you're doing it. I think that's one of the main things I think that people need to really get going. I think that's probably a good example right now, and I'll leave something else for everybody else to comment on.
Sure, Ron. I think you wanted to mention something.
Yeah, spot on with Scott and Jeremy, 100%. That, you know, the complacency with pilot skills and abilities, trying to do more than what you're capable of doing, it gets back to the basic piloting skills. One thing that the public safety operators need to understand, or any operator for that matter, is you're a pilot in the national airspace system, and that's how the FAA views you. And to Jeremy's point, what's going to be a crusher for especially law enforcement is if you don't have transparency and openness. You know, embrace the public and tell them what you're doing with the aircraft. That's going to be really key. And then, you know, if you try to be secretive about it, it's going to kill your program. And the third thing I think would be if you try to violate the rules, to skirt the issue. Hey, you know, we really meant well, but it's not going to end well for you. The FAA is going to shut you down if you're violating the terms of your COA or 107 regulations.
So I think, Ron, you mentioned about FAA, and I would like to get a perspective from FAA. You know, like you have seen so many aviation programs, not just in the drone, but in the other areas also. What message do you want to give programs that are being built or that feel that they have advanced far enough and are lapsing on a lot of, like they are overlooking a lot of safety concerns and stuff? What do you have a message for them?
Well, it's real basic, and I agree with Ron and Jeremy. There's the three things that I have are: know your aircraft, know how it operates, know how it works, know the regulation for the federal side, know what you can and cannot do, Part 107, 135, 91, et cetera, and then know your community. So if you fly your drone, yes, you may be fully safe as far as the regulations are concerned, but you may be flying over an area where the local police department in New Jersey may not like what you're doing. So the community part. So aircraft, regulations, and community. Those are my top three.
Definitely know your environment. You could have a spotless program, but if you go into an area that you're not familiar with, you may need a COA to fly you in that area, or you may be in controlled airspace that you may not be aware of. So you need the proper airspace authorizations to fly in that area. So that could be a big money maker job for you. Well, if you can't fly in controlled airspace and don't have the authorizations, well, there goes your ability to make money. So know the area ahead of time where you're going to fly into.
And of course, the lawyer has to add that the one thing that will really shut you down is when you get sued, right? And then, so whether it's if you have a criminal case because you've done something like Ron was talking about in our earliest session, you know, clueless or careless, and hopefully not criminal, but any one of those could land you a ticket or land you in court. And then, of course, if there's property damage or, you know, God forbid, personal injury, you know, and you don't have insurance because you didn't think it was a big deal, that could be the end of your company and maybe even the loss of your own house. So all of those things that everybody's talking about, education, training, knowing your aircraft, following the rules, if you do all those things, then you have nothing to worry about.
So Don, since you're there, I wanted to ask you a question. How many programs really consult with a lawyer before the program is actually being created?
You know, this would be pure speculation on my part, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I feel like a lot of the smaller companies, you know, the big enterprises, they've got either general counsel or they've got a law firm on retainer. But a lot of the mom and pop folks out there, you know, doing real estate photography or things like that, I guarantee you that they're not speaking to a lawyer. Not that everybody needs to, but what really frightens me is I'm on a lot of different forums where people are giving each other really what could be considered legal advice. And, clearly many of them are not lawyers. And so that can be a little scary. But, not everybody's just going to go out and hire a lawyer. I think there's a balance there. If you're doing something big or unique or different, yes. I think the FAA actually has some great apps, before you fly. And folks like Jonathan Ruprecht, who's a lawyer in, you're shaking your head because he's kind of an icon, right? He's got an amazing website, but, give him a call or somebody else if it's something you're really on. Don't just take advice from a chat room, especially if they're not attorneys, if it's something that involves your business.
True. I totally agree with that. Kristen, I want to ask you this question. It's again related to drone programs, but it's focused on you are part of a big entity, which McKimmon Creed, and it's a big entity. And then you went ahead and created your company. During this transition, from a larger corporate company to a small to mid-sized company, what advice do you have from the drone programs? Because you're fresh right now, just build up your program.
Well, we're not doing services, right? So it's two different sides of the industry. So yeah, at McKimmon Creed, we had about 40 pilots. And I wanted to go back to the very first question and some of those challenges that a drone program can face. And on the engineering side, I wanted to add that adoption by the organization, buy-in at the very top is always very important for the success. A formula that's not uncommon in the engineering world for UAS is that to be a 107 pilot and to perform those responsibilities is just an additional role to other roles that you serve within that organization. And a lot of engineering firms do that. So even though, an organization like McKimmon Creed may have 40 pilots, those pilots, not all 40 of those pilots are doing that every single day. So, it goes back to the training and, the need to remain current and maintain that skill set. And then when you have diverse operations, there's 12 different types of flight operations skill sets that you need to make sure that people are maintaining for the markets that they're serving. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer your question because it is so different. Yes, it's a large organization, but providing services, mostly mapping, geospatial services, to creating software for those markets. So it's a vastly different experience, I guess.
And I'm sure on the point which North Carolina is popular for is the surveying side. This is where having consulting with lawyers for your program is very important, especially with the surveying laws in North Carolina. I know a lot of companies have had that problem with mentioning about surveying and all in their operations, and then they consult the lawyer later on when they are in trouble. So that's why I just try to bring that topic up because I've seen in programs that till you mention about lawyers, have you checked with the lawyer? They have never talked to a lawyer, and then suddenly they're like, is it needed? And then it's better to get a consulting done before making sure everything is right than doing something wrong. But as we move on, there are live questions coming. So these may not be related to the topic directly, but when there are no questions, we'll go on to the program questions. So one question just came up from Burke. I know it's not final yet, but how do you think remote ID will be configured? How will it work? Will older drones be able to be adapted to this new system? Will the general public have access to the data such as operator location? Who wants to take this question?
That one's an interesting question that we still don't know how that's going to be configured. Ryan spoke to remote ID in depth during the conference, but right now that's what they're figuring out at this point in time. Good idea would be that anyone who may have any questions, they should consult their aviation safety inspector at the local flight standards district office. They would be receiving the latest and greatest information on the remote ID. We do know that it's going to be in play by the end of this year, but we've been hearing some talk at, I think it was Caitlin that presented that now it's been moved up a bit. So that's good news. But for right now, we're looking at the end of this year when it will be remote ID will be implemented. But any questions you may have, besides speaking to, with your aviation attorney, consult your aviation safety inspector at the Flight Standards District Office, because they'll usually have the answers. And if you have a question regarding a specific area you may be flying, well, who better than the Flight Standards District Office to know that, because they know that area.
Sure. And a lot more information on the remote ID is already posted on the FAA website.
That's correct.
So
correct.
yes, so if Perk, you're hearing this, reach out to your FISDO. Also check the FAA website. You'll get more information as it gets updated. Everyone will come to know about it. So this is always a good topic to talk about right now is autonomy. So with all this autonomy talk, we need to impress the manufacturers that a PIC is still necessary for piloting skills and the education necessary to fly these vehicles. When the AI robot fails, what to do?
That's when you're going to hit the switch and take over yourself, I guess.
So the pilot is still a part of it. So with that, the question comes is, are we expecting full autonomy at some level where the pilot is totally missing out of the picture, or do you think at some level there will be a person, maybe not a PIC, maybe it's a person who may be a manager, supervisor, safety manager, whatever, or running the operation?
If you're asking me, I'm going to jump in. I'll say that at some point, I think as we get started on this, there will definitely be a PIC. I think as we get further and further along, that will maybe transition out, but we're talking years down the road, in my opinion. I'll let somebody else. I know Christian is really big into autonomy. Maybe I'll let him.
Yeah. Well, it depends on, how hypothetical we get, right? If we cut the entire complexity of the regulation piece out of it and say there's a path and we're going to get there on that, and we just look at it from application standpoint, in a very sci-fi way. There's absolutely some industries that can, in applications where this can be fully autonomous, that make a lot of sense. But I also think that there's certain things that, as much as futurists like to talk about, AI fully replacing the human, it's difficult to take the human out of the loop in certain applications. You're just not going to replace some of the abilities that a human has in certain applications. That subject matter expertise that they have gained in whatever their field, it's just going to be really hard to train AI to do some of these things. So I think there are applications, there will always be a human in the loop, but I think there are some low-hanging fruit that we'll be able to make fully autonomous, so long as we have the regulatory and safety component of it figured out.
So as far as autonomy goes, and I'm a big believer, don't reinvent the wheel. So we're already there with airlines, right? So the pilots are basically managers of aircraft systems. Full-scale airliners can land by themselves, but basically hands off. The pilot is probably the most important component, because that gives you the human element involved with decision making. AI can make predictions and do autonomous, probably marvelous things, but you're still going to have that that human element to understand what the big picture is. And if you look at the FAA and what they proposed, everything has to have a responsible party, someone that they can reach back to say, what happened? How can we make it safer in the future? So, I think, to Chris's point, yes, maybe some things may be autonomous in the future, as far as like multiple drones being launched from a package delivery car. I think there's still going to be, a human element somewhere monitoring to make sure things are going the way they're planned to go.
Sure. So my question, maybe no one wants to answer this, but the question is, the first few years, I would say, the early years of the drone industry, we kept telling people that, drones are not going to replace jobs. It's going to create more jobs. And then now we are talking about autonomy, where most of the companies that are promoting autonomy is somewhere, they don't mention it directly, but somewhere they mention that, you don't need the pilot in this operation, or some way they mention that you need less pilots or less people. Is that going to be a difficult thing to, change public perception, especially when a lot of small businesses, people are got into this operation with the hope that they are, autonomy is not going to affect their business or their future jobs?
I think it's going to be different jobs. So there's going to be coders, there's going to be maintainers, there's going to be all kinds of different jobs, but a lot of these jobs are going to be in the STEM, require STEM background. And that's where, to Scott's point, I mean, he was talking about drone education, but let's start early in elementary school. And I love the programs I'm seeing getting kids excited about drones and STEM early, because if we don't have that capability, then that's going to be a huge problem, because I think there will be this pivot of what those jobs will be. And if people are not prepared and ready to take them and take them on, that's where we're going to have significant problems.
So in another life, I was part of a labor organization, and there are some sensitivities about drones taking jobs away. So what's important to understand is how you sell the technology. It's going to enhance, it's going to create jobs. You don't have that person climbing that 1,000-foot antenna to go and change a light bulb, or whatever the job may be. You're taking the human risk factor and reducing it, but you're also maybe adding a position to that crew that has to go out and do that job. So it's not a job taker, it's a job creator.
And I'll add, you're being more productive. If you're more productive, you're more profitable at the end of the day. Productivity equals profitability. So if you can increase your topos, where you're doing one a day on a 100-acre job on a 50-50 by grid, or you could do 2 of those a day, you're more profitable at the end of the day. We're not chasing the jobs, we're creating profit and productivity. That would be my point.
Sure. No, and I may come back on this question on the drone delivery side, and I hope Ron will answer that also, and everyone in the panel. But moving on to the second session that was there, which was Drone Saves Lives, and that's a big focus, public safety. And everyone here I know is an expert on that side of it. And my question would be is the drone integration slow in public safety? What, according to you, is the reason for this?
Getting town council and everybody on board with the department in chief. That's a big drawback. Yeah, your chief and captain, yeah, they're all about it, but they have people above them they've got to convince. And if somebody is anti-technology, they're not gonna bite on it. So that is the biggest drawback I have. Yeah, my captain, lieutenants, and everybody are all for it. Is keeping their safe guy. Eye in the sky is the best eye. So if you can convince your captain, and then they have to go to town council and convince everybody else, there's a lack in communication, I guess, between town council and the captains and everybody that has to approve it, other than the department head. So that's a drawback in public safety for me.
And I'm sure Ron will agree with me on this, but when I first started going around showing these things, everybody thought I had these little toys. They're like, what are you doing with these little whirly birds? You just want to go out and fly your little RC little toy.
That's it.
And they didn't really realize that it's a tool. It's not a toy at that point in time. So it's changed a lot over the years. We've seen a lot of changes from the media and everything. So I think that was one of the big things. And I'm sure Ron will jump right in on this, coming from his background as well.
Yeah, both Scott and Jeremy spot on, but something I see with some of my clients is, it's a big mountain to overcome. All these regulations, all these rules we have to follow. How do we file for a COA? How do we get FAA 107 authorizations? So when I talk to people, it's like it's like eating an elephant, one bite at a time, right? It sounds silly, but if Department X can do it, you can do it. You just have to make the commitment, the dedication, have your subject matter expert, and have continuity with a strong number 2 as you develop your program, that you're getting into it. And again, coming from a cop background, a pilot background, I keep beating the same horse. You're a professional aviator in the eyes of the FAA. Embrace that role in addition to whatever public safety role you may have, and have to go down that road that way. Understand what it is you're getting involved with. And then of course to sell to the public and to the chiefs and the captains and town council. And again, it's such a unique technology. It may look like a novelty for when you first deploy it, but once the departments realize what the benefit is, you're putting, for lack of a better term, poor man's Air Force into the hands of local departments that could never afford a helicopter or an airplane. It's a tremendous tool, but the biggest thing is getting the buy-in, getting the understanding, the commitment from the bosses to say, hey, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I'd say, no pain, no gain, right? So there might be a little bit of pain on the front end, like you said, getting the program stood up. But anybody that's worked with these assets at all, especially in a public safety arena, knows how valuable they are. When I was in the Air Force and at Air Combat Command, we had the bigs, the large UAS, the Reapers, the Preds, and it was the first time we used one of those large assets for incident awareness and assessment. It was for the 2013 California Rim wildfire, and it changed the whole battle rhythm of the firefighting effort, because now it was a 24/7 operation. They didn't have to put helicopters up there with pilots and the danger that created. And the biggest fans of this were the actual firefighters themselves. They were the ones in front of the media, in front of the camera saying, this is amazing. And so again, that's just one example of so many now that we're seeing in the media, good news stories. But it's completely worth it to set it up. And then once you have it, it's like, why did we wait to do this?
And from an FA perspective, David and Ryan, what resources are available from the FA side to help these public safety agencies? And I'm sure you all work with a lot of these public safety agencies who reach out to you all and all. So what has been the issue in their case? Are some agencies trying to get too much too soon without really understanding if they really need it? Because I know when there was a night waiver thing coming up, a lot of organizations reached out to me and said, we need a night waiver. And I'm like, how are you going to use it? They're like, we'll figure it out when we get the waiver. So, have you all dealt with that with public safety, that they want too much too soon without going through the process?
Well, I can answer your first question, and I know David's chomping on the bit with the second question. First question for the public safety folks, as I mentioned earlier about those LEAP agents, and I know Jason Anton as well. I know Ron mentioned him. I worked with him in Boston. So as far as public safety is concerned, reaching out to their LEAP agent will give them that one-on-one with the FAA. So they can explain to the FAA exactly what they want to do, where they want to do it, and when they want to do it. And then this LEAP agent will be able to tell them everything they need to know. So that LEAP agent for public safety is a big item to do. And they can find that obviously right on the FAA website.
And regarding the night waivers, again, work with your waiver specialist when you submit it through FAA Drone Zone. There's plenty of information on the FAA website that gives examples on what the waivers will look like. But if anybody has any questions, one of the best things to do is go to another organization that's already applied for a waiver and got it, and don't copy it, but tailor it to your operation, because that's what the FAA is looking for. They're looking for, tell me what you're going to do, and then once you tell me how you're going to do it, put it down on paper. I mean, because that goes for UASs and even for commercial operations on regular aircraft, when we're requiring them to create their manuals, their operations manuals, their flight manuals, their maintenance manuals, and all that. A lot of the times they write up everything and then present it to the FAA, but then when the FAA shows up and to do an audit, they're doing something completely different. And so the FAA says, well, why are you doing it differently than what you wrote it up for? Well, it's because it works for us. Well, then put it on paper. If this is what works for you, this is how you do business. It has to be tailored to your work environment and to what your operation is. So work with your FAA people. Go to the FAA website. There's plenty of resources out there as well.
And I think, David, I didn't want to mention it, and you mentioned it. That was a good thing that when you take guidance from someone, don't use their exact information without knowing what's written, because we have had agencies come out and say, we use the same thing and we got rejected, while as you guys got accepted. And I'm like, yeah, because we knew what we wrote and what we were doing. So yeah, I know the agencies. So yes, it's a laughing matter, but it's also because of what Scott had mentioned earlier, the lack of education. The person who's writing that may be forced to write it because he's the only one who is able to file a waiver, and rest of the folks in the team is like, no, we don't want to do it. So he has to be brave enough to submit his first document without any guidance, and the guidance he takes is that whatever's written there, he picks it up and drops it, and that is also not a good thing, because it's our responsibility to make sure the public safety agencies are getting the the right knowledge. So I think that brings up the point about the education part. Ron, you're laughing. You have something to say on that?
Yeah, cops share everything, right? Cut and paste.
So, Kristen, I have a question on how does public safety agencies need to prepare for emerging technologies? Because this is just right now we're talking about drones, but with what GIS can do and what AI and all can do, what is there for the public safety agencies that they need to prepare?
Yeah, prepare. It's a good question. There's so many amazing technologies that can help facilitate some of these different applications. I mean, for example, we're integrating GIS into the drones. We talk about context, content, and communication. So, your GIS, a lot of these big agencies have access. They may have it themselves, or at least have access to these big GIS data sets that carry information that can help them do their job. It can provide them context. So, for example, let's say you're in pursuit of a suspect, it's night, you're using thermal systems, which already are giving you an advantage. You're able to have additional insight about that situation, but you need to also provide that context that or to people on the ground. So, for example, if you were able to overlay on top of there all the roads on top of that thermal information to all the personnel on the ground, the person operating the drone has the context that he can then communicate to the person on the ground to make that situation even safer. So that's an example. Another example would be for, in firefighting, where, the drone, you can put it up, it will help you get more situational awareness about what's going on. But if you could also overlay all the natural gas lines that are going near that place, where all the fire hydrants are, or have the firefighters wearing a device that's giving their location, which you can also then see on the drone in real time. That's the kind of context that allows you to perform your job better. But and there's a lot of things that go into that. So I think that a lot of times these different organizations can be highly siloed. So that limits kind of the adoption of some of these technologies. A lot of them are slow moving. A lot of us are 10 years into this, and I personally thought we'd be further along than we are, but that's just the pace things go. I mean, we are moving along, but yeah, some of these adoption for some of this technology will just take some time. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Sure, and I think Christian, you brought a good point about some of the examples, and for public safety agencies that are watching this session, that's something which you have to know is if according to you all, getting a drone program together and flying a drone is a big hurdle, then if you the bigger hurdle is going to be integrating emerging technologies into this. So drones are a technology, it's a tool. And if you are able to integrate it with emerging technologies, you will see endless benefits. And some of the examples which Chris mentioned, I have seen these live in action, and let me tell you, it's impressive. And it can, if drones save lives, this can save even more, and time and money. So emerging technologies, I think, if you get a chance, if agencies are getting a chance to learn about it, take some time, send someone out there to learn about it, because there are softwares out there, applications out there that can be integrated with your drones. So some of these questions came up yesterday during the session, and maybe someone wants to answer it, but it's focused on one of the questions is, for drones that are used in hazmat application, is there a defined decontamination procedure for the drones afterwards?
I would say follow your current department or agency strategy for decon. And that's one of the things you do have to keep in mind, that you may put a monitor on an aircraft, send it down range, but what are you going to do when it comes back? You do need to, it's no different. Again, the drone is merely a tool. So if you go in with a hazmat suit and a sensor, you're going to have to decon the same way. And maybe it could take the aircraft out of commission permanently or temporarily, but I would follow your agency or department protocols.
Yeah, and to go to Ron's point, I think that's where you need to know your aircraft, as I believe David or Ryan said. I can't remember which one said that, but you're going to have an aircraft that is capable of being deconned. Whether you have to have something that's IP rated or whether it will be decommissioned, just as Ron said. So that's something to keep in mind as well as you're pondering that question. That's a great question, though. I don't think anybody has a standard, though, other than what Ron has said.
Something else to keep in mind too is that, again, this is me speaking as a 107 pilot, not speaking as FAA. Disclaimer, Don. Someone who's going to go and do any ag work, it's a good idea to have 1 or 2 spare drones, because if one of your drones decides to get a leak and it gets completely contaminated, well, then you're stuck. You can't do it. You can't fly anymore. So that could be incorporated part of your operations manual as well.
Sounds good. Second question is, how can drones be used by EMS?
By who?
EMS. So we know about police and fire. So maybe this question comes from someone from the EMS. They're like, how do we use drones? Has anyone worked with EMS and tried to integrate drones into their program?
The first thing that comes to mind is defibrillators, right?
There you go. I was getting ready to say.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead.
No, it's, that's, in my mind, that's the first thing that comes up. We're not quite there yet, but maybe somebody else has some thoughts on that.
Yeah, that could be a use case. So are there any opportunities for civilians to get involved in search and rescue in public safety, public sector safety work?
There's a liability there for regular civilians to get into public safety search and rescue. I mean, if something happens, is the department paying for what messed up, or is the private contractor paying for it? So there's a lot of gray area there, I would say. So I personally don't see regular civilians being brought in, not unless it's a big search and rescue mission, just because of the legality and everything involved within the department.
So
yes,
being the lawyer here and being in Colorado, where people get lost in the mountains all the time, including Air Force members, there's a lot of volunteerism involved in search and rescue. I'm not tracking any liability issues for that. I mean, I think people just go out, they mobilize when they hear someone's missing. And if they have a drone and they can use that for it, as long as they're following the proper rules, I don't think people should refrain from volunteering their time and efforts in search and rescue for fear of liability. Some organizations, now, if you're doing it directly for a public safety organization, they might have a volunteer form or waiver that they're going to have you sign, just being clear that you are not an employee of that agency. But I think that is very routine to have volunteers in search and rescue.
The only thing I would want to throw in on top of Dawn is just make sure you're talking to those local agencies if you're going to be doing this, because if they try and bring in their manned aircraft assets, then you could be a huge issue. But totally, and that's where I think maybe getting everything in place and setting it up prior, rather than just say, hey, I've got a drone and there's a kid that's lost over here, or an old man, I'm going to go fly my drone. But you need to have this in place prior and get in touch with whoever it is, whether it's a FEMA or your local agencies, and kind of have that in place. That way you know what you're going to be dealing with.
Sure.
So I'll tip my hand here a little bit as far as the volunteer stuff. Jeremy, to your point, is 100% spot on as far as organization. You know, everybody wants to come to the party and help, right? How do you organize the response? Is there an air boss? The incident command system, the NIMS, has a procedure in place for manned aircraft. I have yet to see this being adopted by drone use or public safety agencies. That's kind of, it's an angle I've been talking about. So, you know, for what it's worth, to share with you know, everybody here on the you know, the YouTube video and my counterparts here, it's something we should really be talking about as a group. How is this going to look like? You know, you have manned aviation wants to respond, news helicopters, everybody's got a drone wants to come and respond. How do we organize these people that want to come and help? You know, well-intentioned, but you're going to have a collision if you're not careful with managing the airspace.
Something else to consider also, besides being Air Force aircraft maintenance and avionics, I was also Air Force logistics and dealing with incident command centers. And a lot of the times, a lot of these organizations already have in place within their operations manuals how to work with or bring in volunteers. So that would be something to ask about. Do you have volunteers in this operation? And a lot of times they do have that in place already. If not, if you're a drone operator that does search and rescue, it would behoove you to have an operations manual ahead of time, because you could present that to, say, FEMA, and FEMA will look at it, okay, this is good. And then you follow your own operations manual.
And I'm not Air Force, but doesn't Civil Air Patrol, CAP, don't they do search and rescue? So if anyone wants to volunteer, they can join their local CAP chapter.
Yes.
So refer them to their CAP chapter.
Sure, yeah, and that's the thing. I think from there we got few you know, answers to it. Is that first of all, you need to check with the organizations that you want to work with. They may have policies. I know there were certain agencies that when we tried to work with, they said their lawyers made it clear that they cannot because of certain old regulations that were not changed or policies that were not changed. So they said eventually
Lawyers.
Yeah. you need them and you can't live without them, basically. So
Hey, I need to be with Dawn.
so I know that David has a few minutes, so we'll we are still continuing the session, but David has a few minutes. So I just want to put the questions that came on the regulation side. So one of the questions that came out was, is there a strict guidelines for aircraft certification when companies are requesting for BVLOS operation?
At this point in time, no, because that's one of the things that the FAA is looking at. I mean, right now the first concern is remote ID. Once that is in place, and it was talked about at the Commercial UAV Expo by Washington D.C. also, that after a remote ID, then the focus is going to be in operations over people, and then it's beyond visual line of sight. But there's for public use, there's certain organizations that have applied for it and received tactical beyond visual line of sight. I mean, they talked about Chula Vista PD receiving one of it, and then there's other public organizations that actually got a pseudo, well, it's a beyond visual line of sight, but it's to inspect underneath bridges. So, but true beyond visual line of sight is not being looked at currently until remote IDs addressed, and then operations over people. That sets up the platform to then go into beyond visual line of sight. So we're taking baby steps to get to that point.
And they said, so this someone posted was like, please ask this to FAA directly. How does Part 107 pilots prepare for 135?
I think that one's Ryan's.
Well, per part, the part one of regulations part one, day one, I provide a couple of links about ecfr.gov, where they can actually find the 135 regulation, as well as an FAA website for, in particular, UAS 135 cargo on demand operations and what they need. So, review that video, review those websites, and then give me or David a call, or whoever you want on the FAA website. But the website actually shows the particular items you need for pre-application. It's a 5-step certification process, and pre-application is the first step. So it is a lot more compared to 107 to become a 135. So I'll just leave it at that.
So, how difficult is it for recreational pilots to fly in our national airspace? This is like, why is FAA making it difficult for us?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, we have a couple of aircraft or UAS which are flown recreationally, which are about 150 pound drones. So, God forbid something happens to it and it falls over people, it will hurt people. So, I mean, you have a fairly large drone flying over people or over a congested area. So obviously there's issues with that. As well as drones, little drones flying in the vicinity of airports. I mean, I get at least 4 or 5 emails a day about a drone flying over Logan Airport or flying over Newark Airport, and it's disrupting aircraft, like regular manned aircraft. I mean, so there's a few instances where, and you could probably Google it or YouTube it, where they throw a drone inside of an engine, like a regular normal turbine engine, and it does severe damage, really severe. So that's why the FAA is going all over the place to regulate essentially everything.
Well,
I think it's unfortunate that the FAA is actually regulating model aircrafters. AC 9157 originally, I think it was backdated from 1981, where the modelers have their own industry. They have their own community. They abide by their own rules, minding their own business. And unfortunately, the explosion of the quadcopter, the DJIs that came on the scene, the Phantoms, all that stuff, dragged all these modelers in who were just, wanting to enjoy a hobby. Hopefully in the future, I don't know what the FAA's position is going to be. I personally like to see a separation between, modelers and 107 operations, because, if the 107 wants the professional seal of approval, they're not hobbyists. They're out there doing a job, and clearly recreational users are not engaged in for-profit or public safety. I think they need to revisit, and make that separation between the hobbyists again. It's just unfortunate that they got caught up in this whole response to drones.
And the NPRM is
tiered.
Oh, sorry. Scott, I was going to say the NPRM physically separates them out into these federally recognized identification areas. God knows where they're going to be located. So there's a real big concern that we just talked about, growing up kids that are into STEM. Well, if they have to drive 100 miles to fly their toy drone, that could be a big problem, right? So Scott, over to you.
I feel like there might be like a tiered Part 107. Say you have Tier 1 for like your hobbyist guys and your RC pilots, and Tier 2 gets into commercial UAVs and stuff like that, or tier it out into public safety commercial guys or something like that. I feel like they might need to be, or looking to be like a tiered 107. Like Tier 1 is your hobbyist guys, or something like that. Because I'm one of those guys. I fly RC planes. It's just that's what I love to do. I love flying. So if there's a tiered 107 where we can do that, I don't know if that's possible or not. It's just an idea of mine to get the less regulation, say on tier 1 107 than it would be on tier 2 or tier 3. That's just an idea, a thought of mine that I've had. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell Scott, Ron, Dawn, Jeremy. I'm going to tell all of you. Same. I'm going to tell all of our audience. Whatever ideas you have, please write it down and send it to the FAA. Send it to me. Send it to David. We'll send it up the chain. Send it to whoever's email is on that regulation, the remote ID regulation. Send it up, because we don't know until people tell us. So if there's an issue or a better idea, if we don't know, if there's 10 of us in a room and we're trying to generate ideas on how to work something, your letter may actually be so outside the box we never even thought about it, and your idea may be adopted. So please, whatever you have, send it to us.
And also,
as far as the recreational guys, well, Ron, you probably know where Carlstadt is. You know, I used to fly my little remote aircraft out of Carlstadt, and you know, it's close by Teterboro, close by Newark, and we didn't have any issues because we were all part of AMA. We were all following the rules. But what the FAA is now looking at is, because before, like, to fly an actual RC aircraft, you needed some type of experience, or it'd be a really expensive mistake when you tried to land that. These drones now, I mean, I can get a cheapo $15 drone from Harbor Freight, and it takes off and lands by itself. There's nothing stopping me if I live quarter mile away from the final approach end of Newark Airport. If I take that thing off and now it hits an aircraft, just because I'm just oblivious to the regulation, or I'm oblivious to where I am. But that's why the FAA is looking at it. So I don't want to say harshly.
Well, keep in mind also that under 107 that you cease to operate under 107 the moment it goes above 55 pounds. So when it comes to the registration aspect of it, if it's above 55 pounds, you're registering as an N number, like a regular aircraft. So keep in mind that aspect. If you want to operate in 107, read the regulation, bring it up. Don't rely on someone else to say, oh, this is what it is. Read it. And you have any questions, go to your local FSDO. They'll help you with that. And also, if you want to seek counsel, aviation counsel, well, there's Don. Go to Don. For me, it's the other way.
It's this way for us.
So
no, David, that's good information, and I know you have you're running out of time and you have to leave. So thank you for being there, and for folks who are in the call still, we are still only halfway through. But David, thank you for taking the time, and I hope to see you around.
Same. Take care, everyone.
Take care, David.
Thank you, David.
So for those who are just tuning in, we are an hour into a session, and the session is still going on, and we are going to be changing our our theme to more about the future and preparation with that and everything. So welcome if you just joined us. And the question that came up from Aiden, and I think Kristen, you may be able to answer this one. How open source friendly are most commercial drone programs? Are there a lot of people using open source software for data collection and processing?
I think the answer is not right now. I think that will change. It's interesting. So what got me into drones? I got really into drones back in the day when DIY drones was still the main place you went for information. With the Ardu pilot project was going strong, right when the PX4 project started. A lot of those were open source projects, and the market crushed them, unfortunately, for the longest time. And with the with a lot of the political things that are going on with drones right now, with the Blue SUAS program, with the Department of Defense, and their selection of I can't remember the name of the company, basically the red hat of drones, some former 3DR guys actually. Open source is coming back. So on the autopilot side, we're seeing more systems that are coming out that are based off of open source systems. PX4 is the best flight controller alternative to DJI that a lot of these smaller companies can integrate. So on the flight controller side, it kind of starts there, right? Because we need to integrate with that system if you're going to make software on the flight side. So we are in our own software. We started with DJI. We then integrated into the Parrot system, which is coming out soon. And next, we're doing the Mavlink, which is part of that open source system that's maintained by Drone Code, which is part of the Linux Foundation. So that's all open source. On the post-processing side, you're seeing a little bit. So on the GIS, there's QGIS, there's GRASS, and there's some things that people are doing in there. And actually, some of the hardware integrators, their hardware or their software for processing the data that's coming from the hardware is integrated into QGIS, for example. So it's here and there. I wouldn't call it super common. And as things get more cloud oriented, that might change some things as well. There's some interesting open source stuff on the cloud side for geospatial data, for example, but it is mostly dominated by a couple very large companies. So we'll see. I think it'll just it'll come and go. I know it's not a great answer, but it's going to be a little bit of a mix, in my opinion.
Thanks, Kristen. So we're playing musical chairs, and I think next person to leave is Don. Don, I know you have to leave. I think the musical chair is going to go on. Don, thank you for being here, and thank you for the 2 amazing sessions that you put together with your team. I hope tomorrow you're there for the rest of the session, but have a good night. So as we move, here's some questions that are more on jobs and everything. Did someone say something?
No.
So how should students prepare for the new drone industry? I would like everyone's perception in this because each of you all come from a different background, different focus. So how should the students prepare for the new drone industry? And let's start with Jeremy.
I think that's going to be a hard one to answer because that's going to be what level, what kind of students. Are we talking about, young kids? Or are we talking about graduates?
So let's just talk about university students right now.
Okay, so let's go with university students. I would say, obviously, check and see if there's any program at your school to see if there's anything for UAVs already. If not, I know there's a couple aviation-based schools, like an Embry-Riddle or something, where they would have a program specifically for that kind of technology. If there's not, you can bring it up to your professors to see if you can get into some kind of a program, some kind of a research, maybe some kind of undergrad research that you can do along those lines. But the biggest thing is probably just going to be just getting going and getting that actual experience. Try and fly as much as you can, learn as much as you can. As Christian was talking about the open source, get on all these online forums and just take all this information in. Because back when I started, if you were going to fly one of these quadcopters, you had to learn this stuff. You couldn't just go buy one and just take off. We used to make fun of people who bought DJIs. I hate to say that, but we used to make fun of them. And then they came along and they got to a certain level where they were so good that all of a sudden we were kind of like, oh, what they've got is actually better than what we're building. So I think that's part of it, is maybe learn the nuts and bolts of what makes these things actually fly and get going. Learn your aircraft. And really learn that practical side of the flying, because we're not fully in that automated section yet, as Christian's getting into. Once we get there, obviously that's great, but learn the actual flying of it. It's like driving a car. You can learn about how to drive a car all day long, but until you get behind the wheel, you don't know what's going on. So that would be my thing. I'd say start with, talk to your professors, see if there's any kind of a club, anything, any research, and then take it from there.
I would also add, I would ask a student that's interested, are you interested in the drone, or you're interested in the things you can produce with the drone? Because that might dictate your path. If you're interested in the aviation side of it, like you mentioned, schools like Embry-Riddle, they have fantastic programs for that. But if you're interested in geospatial, data creation from a drone, that might be an entirely different path.
I'd say get involved in your STEM program, your local STEM program, something like that. Find your niche and stick with it. The beauty of this technology is you're not stuck to one entity or one department or one. It's spread out between all entities. You're not just stuck in construction. You're not just stuck in inspections. You can do it all, but find your niche and stick with it. Don't try to do everything. Just find what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what you're not going to dread coming in and doing every day from 8 to 5. So that's my recommendation. Like I said, the STEM program is an excellent program to get involved in. Get involved in it. That's my, on top of what everybody else has said.
I have to agree with Scott there. For the younger folks, like elementary and middle school, their STEM programs, which if you never heard of STEM, is science, technology, engineering, and math. So STEM. So those folks, those young children who are interested in aviation, flying drones, or even flying commercial aircraft, STEM is the first step in that. And then once they get into high school, they could start looking into like something called ACE academies, as well as the FAA STEM program and everything else, where I know in the ACE Academy by me, we actually teach, we have a couple of drones and we actually let the students play with them, grab the controller and actually take off, land, fly it around the airport. There's also a couple of resources, and I'm going to take my FAA hat off now and say about on their PlayStation, on their Xbox, on their computer, there are drone programs. FAA obviously doesn't endorse any, but there's a whole bunch there where you can actually buy a controller by First Sky, by DJI, whatever, plug it in via USB, and you can actually fly a drone virtually without breaking it. So if you fly it into a tree, it doesn't cost you anything because it's a virtual tree. So that's something I would definitely recommend, especially if mom and dad aren't going to buy you, $1,000 or $1,200 Mavic Pro. But then after that, and I have my thing with Embry-Riddle because I received my bachelor's and my master's degree from Embry-Riddle, and I taught for them for a while as an adjunct professor. So I have a love for Embry-Riddle, but there are many, yes, there's many colleges out there that offer aviation backgrounds. And whether you want to get a degree in UAS or aviation science or aeronautical studies, whatever you want to do, all those are really good when it comes to anything you do in aviation, whether it's UAS or regular manned aircraft or whatever. So if you're young, STEM. When you're 15, 16, ACE academies and drone simulators. And when you're ready to start writing your college essays and everything, I would say Embry-Riddle is probably, they call it the Harvard of aviation. Or there's a whole bunch of others. I know right now I'm working on my PhD with Florida Institute of Technology, FIT. So but there's a whole bunch out there where you can get a solid education to work with UAS in the future.
Sure.
I'll touch on Ryan on the flight simulators. There's a reset button. In the real world, you get a new aircraft when you hit reset. In the real world, there's no reset button. You don't get a new aircraft.
There is a reset button, right, Scott? They just don't tell us where it is. You just have to press it twice.
Yeah, the trees move.
Yeah.
Tree bark loves carbon fiber. Trust me, it does.
There used to be there used to be one of these simulators that every time you wrecked, it actually told you how much you spent. That's what you need, is a simulator that tells you, like, oh, there goes $1,000. But there's all kinds of simulators out there. Speaking to Ryan's point, I'm not associated with federal government, so I can give you the names of some of them. DJI has theirs. Real Flight's another good one that's out there. I've got a buddy who just created one called Wings. It's just for FPV flying. So depending on what you're wanting to do, if you're wanting something more commercial, trying to do inspections, the DJI one's pretty good at that. If you just want to go fly some RC stuff, Real Flight or the Wings one is an FPV based one. That's great. So look into that. There's a bunch of programs, but that's a great point, Ryan.
Yeah, Drone Racing League put out one too. That's on Steam,
Correct.
Xbox, PlayStation. Yeah.
So, Ron,
Yes, you will find me on the DRL circuit. You'll see me on there.
so Ron, for students who are looking into a public safety career, with this drone technology and all taking so much, importance, how do they prepare for it? Because I know some of these new jobs and all that might come may see a potential candidate if you already have a Part 107 license or about drones.
So these are all good points raised by the counterparts here. It's easier to say what you shouldn't do with drones, right? So if you have that cinematography bug, or if you have that engineering kind of bug, you want to build bridges kind of thing, the drone's a great platform for that. But I got to, back to, understand what you're getting yourself into. You have to embrace the pilot aspect of it. There is a lack of standardized training, so to speak. We have flight schools throughout the country for manned aviation, but I think Unmanned Safety Institute is kind of spearheading some STEM technology type classes. And I think one of the barriers probably early on would be the age restriction for a student to get licensed or certificated, where, you get these young kids that they take right to the technology and they're going to be really good with it. But unfortunately, they're restricted by the rules and regulations that won't allow them to, progress maybe at a rate that they wanted to. So, yeah, I'm kind of hopeful things will move along better. I think, again, with USI's program, with how they're teaching and, certifying, pilots, that the STEM programs are great, going to be a great resource for high schools and vocational schools as well.
Thanks, Ron. So, I deal with a lot of students, and a lot of times the question comes to me is that, I'm graduating, or I just graduated. I want to be a part of the drone industry, and they just don't know what they want to do with it. They just don't know what they want to be a part of, and I try to tell them that drone pilots is not the only jobs out there. So those who are hearing this session, what advice do you want to give them? And they say the thing that they want to be a part of the industry, but they just don't know what they want to do. And so where's the money? Some people have asked me, this drone industry is $1 billion drone industry. So I'm sure flying drones as a pilot is not where the $1 billion industry is. So what jobs are there, or will you see in the next 5 years that they should be looking for, so that they prepare themselves? Like, you can come from Embry-Riddle, say I'm from Embry-Riddle, but I didn't do UAS in Embry-Riddle. I did aviation. So it comes from you come from a different background, and you get into it. But nowadays, somehow they feel like, oh, I have done UAS, so I need to get a job, but no idea what they need to do.
I would say, I think Christian nailed the point earlier of asking what they want to do. Find out what their interests are going to be. As Scott said, what you're not going to be tired of doing every day. Find whatever that passion is that's going to drive you. Because I've met some kids at an event in Florida that came from Embry-Riddle, and they were there showing off some of the technology things they were working on. and they were doing all kinds of stuff. Whether it's going in more towards the model rocketry side of things, because you can still take some of that command and control, the autonomy side, and go into that kind of a field, or whether you want to go and say you want to do FPV flying and cinematography, whether you want to be filming things, getting out and going hiking and flying out somewhere that most people can't get to. So there's a lot of options. There's the kind of, I wouldn't call it boring, but more the mundane, like surveying kind of jobs or something of that nature, or whether it is you want to do something that's a little more out there. So I think Christian nailed it earlier when he said that. Just pick your passion and kind of figure out what you want to do and go that route.
Good. And I think, Scott, you work with a university and everything. So you met a lot of students in that area. What has your thoughts been like? We keep circling around students because they are the future workforce of this industry. And are we as management or leaders or experts giving them the right guidance? Are we missing out ourselves something that should be put given to them? So that's where you've been working with students, and what has been your understanding of how the students see this industry? You're on mute, Scott.
It helps if I hit that unmute, right? It helps. I mean, they're seeing it as a big, of course, everybody's promoted it as a $1 billion industry, but these guys that I'm working with at the college, they understand the aspect and the benefit of the technology. And these guys are, and I feel like they're learning and they understand it. Yeah, there still needs to be some education and some I guess debriefing on some of this stuff as far as everybody coming in and going. But I think everybody there is super excited as far as the technology goes, and realizing what can be done and what's actually what you can do with these units. Like I said, you're not just locked down to one thing, but I feel like they're really, really interested, and the drive is awesome. I mean, I have a passion for this stuff, and to see somebody else with the same passion is amazing to me. So it really, really sits home. And even with the smaller kids, as soon as you put that unit in the air and the smile on their face, it's all well worth it. So, I really see like the kids really, especially your gamers and stuff like that, they love it. I mean, it's just like flying a game, but real life. So, and you're actually collecting usable data. So I feel like they're really, really taking a hold of it, to be quite honest with you.
Thanks, Scott. So shifting the gear to now, the one of the most I think groundbreaking or important news that's making this year with the pandemic is drone delivery. So how do you see drone delivery fitting into your different sectors? You all come from different backgrounds and different focuses. How do you see that fitting into your model? And there is Part 107 operations, there's 135 operations. So when it comes to public safety, commercial operations, even education, like someone asked about EMS and stuff, how do you see this, and how should that, how should people prepare for this, the drone delivery side of it? So let me start with Ryan.
All right. Well, yeah, I figured you'd start with me. Yes, I've been directly involved with the FAA's Integrated Pilot Program, or IPP as they call it. So we've learned a lot. So in this past year or so, we've certificated Amazon, UPS Flight Forward, and Google Wing out in Virginia. And we're working with others like Zipline, which just I think they just aligned with Walmart. So Zipline and Unmanned Systems Alaska and a few others. So essentially, right now we're learning with my division, which is the maintenance division, on how they're actually going to maintain those drones. What type of maintenance requirements do they have? What type of schedule do they have? And then we have other folks which are looking at the operations side. So how do they fly if it's autonomous? How many PICs are there per nest or fleet? So is it one person viewing 10 aircraft, one person viewing 5, or is it one-on-one? So it's right now it's still a learning process for us and the operators. And even though the IPP is sunsetting this month, we're going to be continuing with these operators and the new ones under a different program. It's essentially the same thing. They're just going to call it something different. For those that are interested in becoming a on-demand cargo operation, there is a lot more, as I mentioned before. It's a lot more than 107. You will be following Part 135. There's a couple websites to look at, and definitely contact the FAA. Call me if you have to, and we'll have a sit down and discuss all the parts and pieces of 135 for UAS.
Ryan, you make, you said you can call you can sit with you. I'm like, but it's right. Good to see FAA's approach. Like a lot of times people come with this question, like we don't know whom to reach out to, or we don't know how to talk to FAA. And from all your discussions, it really feels good to know for people that FAA wants to talk to you. FAA is ready to talk to you, and that's very good of you to bring that point out. Is that reach out, because a lot of times we get these questions coming to people like who, no one responds back, and half the time I tell them is, you're not reaching the right person, or you're not making that attempt. You cannot just expect to put a question randomly and not get a reply to it. Now, folks like you and David who are participating in these conferences, workshops, are the faces that you can reach out to, and then you may be able to point them in the right direction. But it was great of you to put that point out, that earlier also you mentioned that send your whatever ideas you have, send it, because that may be a solution to something that you're thinking about. So thanks for putting that out, Ryan.
Well, exactly what you said. I mean, how many times do you send an email out to help@amazon.com or help@something.com and you never get response? But now the folks that are part of this conference who paid the money to see it, they want to see a face, they want to see a name. So when they Google Scott, or they Google Jeremy or Ron or even myself, they know they have a face, a name, and they know what we know. So they can actually reach out to us and tell us, hey, listen, I saw you on this conference and I have a few more questions, and we will know exactly what they're talking about, instead of going to help@leechsystems.com or help@FAA.com. So there's no name.
Strategicpartners.com.
Get that plug in there.
So you know what I mean. So instead of going to an empty mailbox somewhere where eventually
it's so good
get to you, at least they send me an email, I will call you back. If I have no idea what you need, I will make sure I send you to the right person who knows what you need.
And I would say definitely reach out to the FAA before they reach out to you, because that's not the call you want.
You'll be surprised the calls I get.
So how do you see drone delivery being positioned for the public safety side? And this could be for Ron, Jeremy, and Ryan, Scott, everyone. How does public safety fit into this? Do they have to look into 135, or they can stick on 107? And what use cases do you see in the public safety side?
So again, not reinventing the wheel. Public safety already falls under Part 91 for the most part, right? Even air ambulance operations, as long as they're not charging for patient delivery, they don't classify as Part 135. They're Part 91. I think community acceptance is going to be a big hurdle, because people don't realize the noise that's going to impact some of these deliveries. And Again, it's gonna take some outreach here to get some buy-in from the public. That okay, so the defibrillator's coming in for an emergency, but okay, but where's it gonna go? What does it look like? What's the plan look like? So I think before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we need to pre-plan. Okay, so the Amazon drops, is that going to be a subscriber-based system where they come into a drop box in a neighborhood or to a house or whatever? I think the public safety thing is going to have to be the same way. What's the 911 system look like? What are they going to look at? Are they going to go and peer in a window to see if there's an emergency? A lot of questions that really still need to be answered. So from the public safety aspect, you need to build that trust that they're going to be using in the proper way.
Yeah, as far as what my thoughts are, as far as a package delivery and public safety, that's kind of interesting because you got to think outside the box. You're not delivering a good as you would say as Amazon or Walmart or these other companies would. What it could be helpful for though is getting a tool downrange to an operator that you have that they don't have in their vehicle. So I would think it'd be something more along those lines to where maybe you have some evidence you need to get back. So you send it back to the station and you can have it analyzed immediately. I think these are kind of the things that where it will probably wind up going. But as I always tell people with the UAVs, honestly, we're only limited by our imaginations. There's so many things to do with them. And it's just a matter of finding that need and then trying to fill it.
As far as public safety for deliveries like IV bags, stuff like that. I know a couple of firefighters that were fighting a fire, heat exhaustion, passed out in the woods. They end up flying some IV bags and stuff like that to them. So cell phones, radios, water bottles for these guys so they don't have to walk back to the command post is very beneficial because they are fighting fires. They are doing stuff that personally I wouldn't do. Anything we could do to get them something quicker and safer is beneficial to them and everybody else as well, I believe.
Makes sense. So what applications, so now we're going into the drone application side, and what applications will be impactful with beyond visual line of sight waivers?
What was the question? What's going to be?
Yeah, what applications like with beyond visual line of sight waivers, eventually will be more, when it gets more easier, what use cases or applications do you see will be more impactful? And, for what industry or for what organization will it be more beneficial?
I could take that for today. I mean, mapping 2,000 acres, you have to set up and move downwind. If I can go beyond visual line of sight, I could take an EBX and fly it beyond visual line of sight and cover that ground. So beyond visual line of sight will allow us to cover more ground, but safely cover more ground. I'm saying in rural areas where you don't have a lot of people or pedestrians or something like that, allow us to fly longer to get the field done or something like that. That's where I see beyond visual line of sight helping out a lot in what I do, which is aerial mapping and stuff like that. So,
anyone else has anything else to add on that?
Pipeline, power line patrol, different inspections, where you can cover, large distance. Right now, helicopters and airplanes are doing a majority of these jobs. And again, it's not going to go and replace manned aircraft. It's going to fill that niche that, mosquito surveys over marshes, agricultural applications. It's basically limitless. Again, what's your imagination hold for you for the industry? Somebody's going to go and reinvent a way to do things better using drones.
And one of the things I've realized is like, and maybe you may feel it something different, but when the drone industry initially kicked off and everything, it was more fixed wings, a lot of fixed wing discussions and a lot of fixed wing operations. And then the rotor wing, I think the rotor aircraft took over the industry and made easy, because I myself started as a fixed wing pilot and I had to go through 5 days of training to fly an aircraft. And I really know that when I had to give my flight test, I had to go it was practically like a flight test, and they make you do the test, they make you do emergency operations and stuff. And then when the rotor side came in, it changed my whole day. It's like, yeah, you can fly here, press this, return to home, everything is good, and now you are a really good pilot. And I'm like, how am I a really good pilot? But when you, with this beyond visual line of sight kicking off and everything, as this gets a better, more defined, do you see fixed wings coming back and taking those operations because of the limitations that rotor wings have?
I think that's where you're going to see the VTOLs come back into play a little more, where we get the best of both worlds. I think that's kind of where they're starting to shine. Previously, obviously, it was just either a quad or a multi-copter and then a fixed wing, as you're saying. Now, at least the VTOL, we have that hybrid where we get a little bit of both, so that way we can get that ability to just hover in place and take off from pretty much anywhere and land anywhere. But then we also get that duration of flight that we get from a fixed wing, because we're not trying to use propellers to keep the whole thing in the air. We're able to use the aerodynamics of the wing. So I think that's where the VTOLs are going to bridge that gap and probably come to the forefront, depending on the application, obviously. I mean, if you've got something where you're at a small environment, something like a Mavic or an Anafi is still going to be king. But for what Scott was talking about, a long flight mission where you're trying to get, say, 2,000 acres. I mean, obviously that's where something of that nature is going to be the best. You're going to get to that.
I think the gap's being closed, though, honestly, for a couple reasons. I think that the systems are getting more efficient. You look at it, for example, an M300, this would be a photogrammetry specific application. M300 with a P1 45 megapixel camera flying at 400 feet, getting a ground sampling distance that is equivalent to an EB flying at 200 feet, and flying for 45 minutes versus 55 minutes. You're covering more area, actually. So that gap is getting closed between that. I mean, but you're right. I mean, that was always the thing that, lift helps, right? It makes it more efficient. But it also the hybrids, right? So the hydrogen systems, the hybrid gas electric systems. I started fixed wing. I still love flying little delta wings and stuff like that. That's a lot of fun. But there's just so many more applications you can do with the multi-rotor. Being able to hover in place makes a heck of a difference in a lot of applications.
But one thing I feel I should mention, and I don't know how it'll go once remote ID is in place and operational and everything else, but once all these operators, whether they're doing inspections like pipeline inspections or firefighting or anything, my question would be is how would they detect and avoid other aircraft? So yes, the UAS is beyond your line of sight. You still have goggles, you see where it is, but how will other aircraft see you, and how will you see other aircraft? That's a little nugget to think about.
So along those lines, we're talking less than 400 feet. So unless you're in the vicinity of an airport or a helipad or some other areas, I mean, I think that issue could be resolved. But if you have an airplane flying at 400 feet, barring a crop duster or some other ag application, that airplane is already in the world of hurt, and that drone is the least of their problems.
Yeah, but I will say, in my personal experience, the only kind of, and they're not even close, but things that have startled me that had to do with aircraft always had to do with helicopters.
True.
Flying low, doing things, coming out of nowhere, doing things that scare the heck out of you, and you're doing everything to make sure
because we can
escalate that situation.
Now, typically, helicopters stay 1,200 feet and below. You avoid the flow of fixed wing traffic. That's the beauty of the aircraft. Yeah. For like on-scene medevac, you're landing in off-site. It's a different kind of flying, but you generally avoid the flow of fixed wing. So where you run into problems are some helicopter routes around major cities, which are probably in Class B airspace or some kind of controlled airspace anyway. But when you look at the big picture, you need to understand that the drone is going to be below, for the most part, 400 feet. And again, if unless it's an airport environment or a helipad or something, that's again going to be incumbent on the 107 or whoever that is, the professional is flying that drone, to be aware of what their surroundings are and the terrain that they're going to fly over.
So I think one of the things that comes also from all of this is the training aspect of it. You know, I've seen this industry, like I said, from fixed wings to rotor wings, then the hybrids and everything. But somehow the training side of it hasn't been standardized, or the lack of training for many of these programs that are established. No matter how much we tell, how much we preach, uh, why do you think that? Do you think rotor wings really? I would say is made people feel that training is not important in some way. Because I know, like I said, fixed wings, even when you wanted to buy a fixed wing from a company, they make you go through a process. And while as rotor wings changed completely the industry, and people started, overlooking training. And no matter how much we tell people, it still comes to points wherein for example, take public safety programs. Who's the master trainer, or your drone program manager, or your drone or chief pilot? Maybe a person who just is the first one who flew in the group. And so how do we ensure, or how do we change this thinking in the various sectors you are in? Is what change is needed?
I think that's $1 million question. I think humans in general just don't apply to that. I hate to say that, but if I had a fixed wing, I couldn't fly it in this room I'm in, but I can take my quadcopter and fly it in here because they're that easy. Because they're that easy is part of why I think a lot of us just go, oh, I've got this under control. I know exactly what I'm doing, until you get to what Scott was saying earlier. That thing kicks out of GPS mode and I'm in ADDI mode and don't realize it because I'm inside my house. And the next thing I know, I'm flying into the side of the walls and tearing things up. Well, the same thing is going to happen outside as that scenario I'm mentioning here. I think it's the technology's gotten so good that it makes people almost feel like they're better than they are.
I think it's just being overconfident in the aircraft. The aircraft is doing it. I don't need to do anything but hold a remote in my hand. It's got everything else. So I think we just need to teach that, hey, you still have to control, even though it is flying autonomously, you still have to have some kind of control, or be able to gain control of that aircraft if it needs to be traveling north, and then next thing you know, it's traveling northwest. And, what do you do? So I think
wasn't that on the 107 test? Wasn't that being too macho? Wasn't that what the answer was?
There you go.
So as it relates to New Jersey, what I try to do is, I'm not the end all be all, but I'm really trying to push consistency throughout the state. There is no common price for 107 training. It's all over the place. And there's no consistent training as far as flight training. There's no flight standard. So what I try to push is, understanding what you're getting into, and what's the role you're going to fill. So, if I talk to Department A, the same message is going to be to Department B, and hopefully these departments are going to start talking and say, this is the best practices, and here's how we want to do it in New Jersey. North Carolina, you guys had your own 107, or not 107, but your own drone certification. That's not maybe the right fit for New Jersey, but maybe it's for South Dakota, right? So again, my message to all my clients and people that are interested in it is like, let's get on the same page. Okay. So that, standardized training. So understand the airspace that we're going to operate in. We have, 2 Class B and a Class C airspace, and a couple of Class Ds. Again, it's really important to understand the operating environment and getting that message out across the board consistently. I'm not sure what works in other states, but that's what I'm personally trying to do to build the industry here in New Jersey.
I think a budget plays a big factor also. Like I've been in programs wherein pilots are there, the technology is there, but they don't have the money to spend on training, or they don't have they basically don't see this as a need, because they're like, yeah, the person knows how to fly. And I think we keep saying unmanned aviation, and then we don't realize the word aviation is a part and parcel of training, safety, everything. And if this technology, if we were that serious about training and everything, I think we could have achieved a little bit more sooner than wait for things to change. Because I think from an FA's perspective, and Ryan may correct this, and as I've talked to FAA folks, they keep saying that we see, I'm a manned aviator, but I'm talking as a drone pilot, is that they see us as aviators too. So when you see
So
as an aviator, my question comes is that why aren't we taking that seriously? And I have led programs. I have been in the training side, and when it comes to training, I am serious about it. But I don't see the seriousness in the management side of it, because they just feel that this is a technology out there.
So
Well,
that's the budget issue that you brought. I'm sorry, that's the budget issue you bring up. Departments have a lot of money, and Jeremy, you could probably correct me. They have a lot of money to spend. They don't know what it is or what to do, but they had this money they have to spend and within a timeline, and they want to buy the thing with all the bells and whistles, but not how to operate it. And that's dangerous. It's like giving a check to somebody to go buy an aircraft, full size aircraft, and say John F. Kennedy killed himself. Low time pilot got into instrument conditions because he wasn't prepared for the aircraft, the system that he purchased. He had the money to buy, and by all rights, he checked the block and he was certified to fly it, but didn't understand what he was getting into. So it's dangerous from that respect, that if you have a big budget and you don't take it serious, you're going to get yourself in trouble either with the FAA or the insurance companies may or may not back the liability.
But Ron, you're totally right. We've actually had people. I know we were at an event. And Scott and Darshan and I actually had this group who came who had bought, I think it was like 12 or 15 UAS, and said they didn't know anything about it. They didn't have a Part 107. They didn't have anything. They just went and bought the equipment and had no clue about what was going on. They just went and bought it because they had the budget. But I know, Ryan, you had something to say, so I'll turn it over to you, Ryan.
Oh, well, as far as what is current, so for 107, obviously people that already have a private pilot, commercial, that are anyone certificated under Part 61, just have to take that online test and then get their remote pilot certificate. Everyone else has to go to laser grade or one of those other ones. So that is what the FAA calls that practical test standards, PTS. So that's what they're currently at. Now, why do they have just a knowledge exam and not an experience exam, like having actually like going out and doing a check ride or anything else? There's the FAA had fights on both sides. They had AMA and a few others, and then they had people on the other side. So this was their compromise. What will it be in the future? Who knows? That's not up to me. That's well above my pay grade. That's the administrator of the FAA. So right now, as it stands, it's just that knowledge exam. There are thousands of different companies out there which teach you the actual practical experience, where they sit down with you, show you the controller, how to do it. Some of them are virtual, like through YouTube channels and videos you can download, and others are actually in person. Obviously, the FAA doesn't endorse any of them. There's some that are good. There's some that are terrible. So that's essentially where we're at now. Will it change in the future? More than likely, yes. But right now, since this is so brand new, and there's good points and bad points on both sides of the fence, this is what the FAA has, and it's just that knowledge exam, so you know what an airspace is, what why you can't take off your drone on the landing approach to Newark Airport. So
I just don't understand the kickback of having, I mean, to get my driver's license, I have to go take a test and get in a vehicle with the DMV. So just the same as for being in the air, the kickback for being in the air. I don't understand. Hey, to drive on the highway, you have to go take a test at the DMV and get in a car with the DMV. It should be this. I feel like there should be a practical flight test part included in with the knowledge exam. Because I mean, I've come across some people that have passed this knowledge exam that really don't need to be behind the sticks personally. So they passed the test, but they have no. So I'm just saying, I'm not talking bad about anyone. If that is you, I'm so sorry. But
no, and Scott, there's something which I want to add to that is there is another thing which I don't know if it's true, and I don't want to put FA in a tough situation, but you can fail on airspace in your test and still clear your Part 107 because of the percentage.
77ly.
you don't have to understand the nautical chart.
Guys, remember what I said earlier. If you have a great idea, remember, the FAA puts maybe 5 or 6 people in the room to generate ideas. And if they don't think of it, it doesn't get part of it. Cool. So if you have this great idea, make sure the FAA finds out about this great idea.
I'll be emailing you, Mr. Ryan.
Again, I think it's important for us as industry leaders and voices to hammer that message home that you want to get into it. There's a pathway for it. We'll help you. You know, I think the Arizona Drone Fest is, you know, I'm not sure what the population is for this event, but things like this and getting the awareness out there and being willing to talk to people is going to go a long way to professionalizing our industry and bringing, you know, the young people in. It's going to be here. Well, it's already here. It's just going to expand.
Cool. So Ryan, Ron, you mentioned about the Arizona Drone Fest, and you know, as we're coming close to the time, you know, the reason the Arizona Drone Fest, you know, was created, and Arizona Drone Fest is Chris Tenard's, you know, idea and brainchild, and it's his event. The Education Expo is just what Era was brought into this discussion, but the focus there is that we want to try and provide the education, training, and you know, the outreach at low cost to no cost. You know, we gave public safety agencies, they're not charging anything, free. For students, free. For rest, it's $30 and it is 20% off code also. But that's mainly to make sure that the folks who register do attend the session. But you know, events like this is needed and it's very important. I'm not saying just this, but there are other events. I think those who cannot attend the bigger events, cannot attend the, you know, because of travel restriction budget, should look for these type of events rather than rely on just reading something online or even going to YouTube and just, you know, if this is on YouTube, yes, this is good. I'm not saying just generally just going and hearing one person out. You need to get your knowledge. And I think these discussions, you know, we cannot be we cannot meet in person, but we can still have a conversation as if we are all, you know, just close by. And that is what the industry needs, is people to talk to each other, make sure that they're getting the right guidance. So that's where this, you know, the event and everything comes up. And tomorrow we have training sessions, Part 107. We have data processing. We have, you know, aircraft automation and other aircraft discussion with Skydio. Then we have Axon is putting together for public safety their data management software and everything. So we have a whole day of training, but we also have a drone festival. End of the day, you know, it's all commercial pilots are recreational pilots, but not all recreational pilots are commercial pilots. And that's the thing, you know, we want to make sure that you enjoy the day. And that's why the drone festival is there tomorrow. You go to the website, see, you know, it's like a red carpet event. We're trying to create a whole virtual environment. You can see filmmakers put together drone videos. So lots going on still, one more day to go. But as we call it the night, I'm giving each person a minute to basically say what they're looking forward in the next 5 years. And if there's something interesting they're going to be doing in the next 5 years that they would like to share. So Kristen, let's start with you.
Yeah, for me, the thing that's most exciting is the tighter coupling and integration of the drone into these different processes. The more we flesh out these sophisticated operations and the more we connect it in with our workflow, our different workflows, I mean, that's what we're focused on, because it just makes so much sense that if you can create that channel, that pipe from the drone to the cloud to the office and back and forth, you can speed up the process in so many of these different workflows because there's so much rich data that you're getting from there. But right now, a lot of these workflows, it's disjointed where there's the drone in the field chunk, and then data is created and it goes to the processing chunk, and then it goes to the analysis chunk, and then decisions are made and you go back to the beginning. So putting all that together to me is really exciting, really integrating it into our workflows. I mean, I see, kind of a sci-fi future where, people are wearing deployable drones, and it's using sense and avoid, and it's giving them context with a heads-up display, and they're using voice commands to tell it what to do, to bring up different data, to create data and relay that back to others. With 5G, we're using RTMP streams to stream all this information back and forth. So just getting it more connected, I think there's some really cool things to just get instant information back and forth.
And anything interesting happening with Bird One that's people have to be aware about?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're building, right? So we make that pipe. We're going, straight from your GIS to the drone. We're collecting that information. We're visualizing the information you already have. Emergency response situations, we're collecting the imagery. We're editing tabular data. I know it sounds so boring, but everything's driven by tabular data. When you order something from Amazon, it's driven by tabular data. When you stay in a hotel room, it's driven by tabular data. So we're bringing that to the field, and you're able to interact and enter new information, say, hey, this is what's going on here. Let me change these attributes, and here's some images. Hit a button, boom, that goes back to someone in the office. They know instantly, like, oh, this is what's going on, and then they can make decisions. And we're connecting that in with, IoT type, cloud-based processing. So you're doing this stuff in the field, collecting information. For example, we're working with a company that does some sophisticated fire analysis that will make models of where it's going to spread hour by hour. So you can go and say, hey, this is where a fire is, and it will send that point back to the cloud. And on the cloud, it's doing some really heavy lifting that you could never do on the drone. And it's coming up with the answers, and then it's sending the answers right back to you in a couple seconds. So you can see, hey, predictably, this is where this could go hour by hour. And then you can make decisions right there and say, hey, we need to do this to mitigate the situation. So that kind of connectiveness where you can get instant answers, I think that's the coolest thing with drones, in my opinion.
Sounds good, Kristen. And every team needs a nerd, and I think Kristen's our nerd for this. And I think there's a lot of good information that you put together. And that's the thing, it's not just the drone thing we are talking about. It's a lot of the data part that we have to still focus on. And thank you, Kristen, for that. Jeremy, what's the blasting news out there that you would like?
I think there's a lot. I think Christian was kind of right on it there with his vision of the Jetsons in the future. I think that's kind of where we're going to be going. But having that said, I think one of the things that we're trying to do is really sounds kind of cliche, but trying to save lives. Trying to get the UAVs integrated with some of the bomb robots is one of the things we're actually currently working on. So it's one of the things that we're looking forward to. But in the next 5-year outlook, I think I hit on this on the applications talk is really to see where the battery technology goes and see what we can do with these when we start extending the flight times and get a little more out of the platforms. So I think that's something I'm kind of looking forward to, seeing what we can get to, because I know there's companies out there even working on electronic flight for manned craft. So I think once we get to that, it'll be a very interesting time.
Sounds good. So Scott, what's the news for the next 5 years for you?
I'm looking forward for the UTM, to be quite honest with you, and everything else. I mean, who wants to sit in traffic? I mean, come on. If I can view the air from, if I can view traffic from the air, that's a great thing for me. I'm just working on some bridge inspection stuff and just looking. I mean, the future is bright for this industry. I mean, it is, like I said, we're just chipping at it right now. So I feel like it's gonna open up, and it's gonna open up the doors for a lot. So I love it. I really do. The only thing I have to say before I sign off is for you guys, if you're flying, everybody who's attending, thank you all. Fly safe, fly smart, and have fun is about the only thing I can say. So enjoy your time in the air. If it takes you 4 battery sets to run that mission, that's a good day. So
eventually it'll come down.
That's exactly right. That means I spend at least an hour in the sky. That's a beautiful day. So I mean, that's about all. I really enjoyed it. I thank everybody, the panelists, everybody, all the attendees, the beautiful state of Arizona. I wish I could be there in person, but hey, this works. So
Ron, what about you, Ron? What's the next 5 years?
So my focus pretty much with Lead Strategic Partners is trying to standardize industry and training procedures, policies. I do have a side interest I'm working on. It's called ULTRA, Urban Low Altitude Transport Association. And what that is I'm teamed up with an air traffic controller that works out of Newark Air Tower there. And we're trying to bring some realism into the UTM space. So you have all these great ideas that, we're going to try to force this into the existing airspace. Well, from the bottom up, this is the operational reality you have to face. If you want to go and operate in a congested airspace like the New York, New Jersey corridors up there, you have some, industry expertise that can probably guide you and help you integrate your existing platforms into basically a new entrant category. So that's what we're looking at for the next few years. And again, it was a pleasure meeting all the panelists here. Some I've talked to, some I haven't, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
I would like to give the last, word. It's always good to have the last word from FAA. So, Ryan, and I don't know if you have taken out the FAA hat and then talking to us, but I would like to get your thought. Other than remote ID, I know you mentioned about remote. What else should we be looking for, and what you're looking for, and anything interesting that you would like to share?
Well, you know what? I have to agree with Ron, Scott, Jeremy, and Christian. Both myself and the FAA as a whole is looking forward to the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years in aviation. I mean, this drones and everything like this, the thing right behind me here, this changed the industry. This completely changed from what people know of aviation, where it was only for a select few operators that could afford it. Now anyone can afford it. I mean, I can buy a Phantom 3, or Phantom 4, and attach something small to it and send it on its way. I mean, if I really wanted to, minus regulation and everything else. But I mean, this thing behind me has completely changed the industry for everyone: package deliverers, recreational flyers, police, EMTs, everything. Luckily enough, I am on a couple of different teams with NASA. NASA is leading the charge for what they call Advanced Air Mobility, AAM, which it used to be Urban Air Mobility, which is the Jetsons. It's flying people around in drones. So we're looking forward to all those different things that NASA has coming up in the next few years. I know they partnered with Joby Aviation, so you can look up Joby's UAS. They partnered with EHang, the Chinese manufacturer of their drone. So there's so much to look forward to. So this is such an exciting time in aviation, not just for me and the rest of the panelists and the FAA and the DroneFest, but for everyone.
Thank you, Ryan. So
once again, it's a pleasure to meet all you guys too.
And
Ron, from New Jersey, it's called.
I have to agree. I have to agree that this has been a great panel, and folks who are calling in, thank you for taking the time to be here. It's 2 hours, but I know when you have discussions like this with friends and drone experts and everyone who enjoys drone, end of the day, those hours pass by very quickly, and I did not even realize the time getting done. I know that it's a Friday, and because of the pandemic, the lifestyle has changed. Fridays have become pretty dull for us, but I think the drone part of it keeps us exciting. So a lot of good message, good information from today's session. One of the things that FA highlighted is that if you have good ideas, if you have suggestions, send it. Someone is there to hear your voice. You don't feel like your ideas are not going to be looked at. A lot of things are happening in this industry, and it's going to happen. I would say like 5 years has just passed by, and we are now going to witness the next 5 years with emerging technologies, with UTM, urban air mobility, a lot of things, advanced air mobility, a lot of things are happening. So you have to be current with the industry. be part of the discussions. Do not, feel like you cannot ask questions. You have so many people out there to ask to. As we are wrapping up, I just want to say that tomorrow we have a bunch of sessions. Look at the agenda. Don't miss it. So it's more focused on the training side. We have to thank our two national sponsors, SkyDeo and Axon, and our level 1, level 2, and level 3 sponsors who have made this event possible and keep the cost of registrations low. So right here we have our sponsors also. So it's the people who you talk to that's going to help grow this industry. And next week, really, we have Let's Talk Drones, part of AUVSI North Carolina. We're going to be talking about from recreation to commercial. The discussions on that. It's going to be a 2-hour talk, which I'm going to be moderating. The link is on the offers side. Just use that link. It's a free thing that we put together every last Friday of every month. In addition to that, reach out to the people in the industry, have your questions asked. And with that, I'm your moderator, Darshan Divakaran, and I would like to call it the night. Have a blessed weekend, and I will see you all as and when the industry opens up again. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Good night.